So today's topic is for those people looking at upgrading or regrading your property is should you buy first and then sell or sell first and then buy? My name is Max Phelps. I'm a money coach with Golden Eggs, where we're on a mission to help people stop worrying about money and get on the path to financial freedom. I'm joined by Tammy on the other end of the call. Tammy, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So, how would you express the question?
Well, my mum actually owns a property. It's an investment property. And in the next couple of years, she's thinking about getting a new place for herself, something that's more suited for her. We're just thinking, shall we sell that place first and then buy the other place, or should we buy the other place and then sell her current one? We're just unsure.
Yeah, interesting. So that one's an investment property, which is kind of a lot less stressful than when it's the place that you're living in, but some of the concerns are still the same. So first let's imagine that you sell first and then buy. Doing it that way is great because you get the influx of money from selling, because you've got to pay off the other mortgage and you've got some profit, and that means you feel like you've got the deposit to put down and everything can go fine. But it's highly risky. And it's highly risky for a number of reasons. For those living in their property, it means they've basically got to move out and then find somewhere else. But even in your mum's case, it's also, if the market's flat, if you sell and then buy, it doesn't really matter. But if the market's rising and you sell today, and then it takes you a bit of time to buy, you find that the gap between what you sold for and what you buy for is getting bigger and bigger. And so there's a big risk that you sell. And a terrible example of this I saw was a poor old lady whose husband passed away. She sold her house for $750,000 and couldn't find a unit that she wanted to live in. She didn't want to be in the house that they'd been in before, and it was too big anyway. She was looking for a unit. In the time it took her to find a property, prices were rocketing up, and before she knew it, the units that were selling for about $400,000 to $450,000 were now costing $650,000 to $700,000. So instead of selling a house and buying a unit and ending up with some money left, she ended up basically selling the house and buying a unit for the same price.
Right.
So that's what can happen as when things are moving. The tendency is to kind of hope to find the right bargain, and it takes even longer to find a place.
So let's say if you've already got your eye on a place, then it's fine to sell and then buy. But if you've got a couple in your mind, or you haven't found a concrete one, how many months do you reckon? What's the time period that you really gotta find something?
Look, markets can move very quickly within a 3-month period. So I would suggest anything less than that is good, and anything longer than that is a bigger risk.
Okay.
But let's go the other way now. Supposing you bought first, and our recommendation is always to buy first. But when you buy first, the problem is then, well, how do you raise the deposit when you haven't sold? And also then, are you at risk of not being able to sell your place? Are the two concerns. Now, they're quite easily solved. One way, of course, is what's called a bridging loan, which most people might be familiar with, where a bank will lend you enough to buy the new place even before you've sold the old place. And the total amount that you owe when you own both of the properties at the same time is called the peak debt, and then the bit at the end is called the end debt. And as long as you've got enough money to service the end debt, then you should be able to do that with some lenders. Although a lot of lenders are not very good at doing this. It's quite a tricky thing. But in that situation, then if you bought, then you'd be under pressure to sell as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
The other way we prefer to do it, which is slightly more pressure on, is with contracts. And that's simply to, for example, you buy a property subject to a 12-week contract. Now, standard contracts are 6 weeks long in New South Wales, but there's nothing wrong with asking, can I buy it in 12 weeks? Even if the property is going to auction, you can just say, oh, I'm only bidding if I can get a 12-week contract. Now, if you buy on a 12-week contract and sell on a 6-week contract, then you've got 6 weeks to sell the property. And then what can happen is that the two properties settle on the same day, and so on that same day you cease to become the owner of one and become the owner of the other, but you've then got the logistic challenge of loading up the truck in the morning and then moving in the afternoon. But plenty of people do it, but there's no risk of the market being out of whack, and you're not subject to that giant big bridging debt either.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and most vendors would allow that extension of the time period on the contract?
It depends, doesn't it? It depends on what they're trying to do. They may have upgraded and can't do it. But when you're bidding on a property, you get to find that out. And so normally we would ask first, because if they say yes, then go ahead. But if you really, really want that property and they say no, well, then we go back to bridging.
Okay.
So we've always got bridging as our fallback option. But remember, at auction, if you're selling a property at auction, you want as many buyers there as possible. So if someone says that they want to bid over 12 weeks, then do you want them to bid at the auction, or do you want to risk that you've got less bidders and you might get a lower price?
Right, okay.
And so in most cases, people will say, no, I'll allow the 12-week contract, because they want the best price and they'll figure out their own issues with the 6 weeks and the 12 weeks.
Right, okay, well that makes sense.
Okay, well that's it for buying or selling first. I've got clear preference in that one, as you can tell. But as always, try to be genuine, have fun, stay curious.